Hey everybody, Jason here. This is the first of 12 videos breaking down kind of some of the song crafting and some of the, generally just the background, but just to give you kind of an understanding of how my brain works in songwriting, how I approach kind of writing songs using the scriptures. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. This is just how I do it. And so I wanted to give you some background. So like I had said in my last video, when I had endeavored to write a Christmas album, it didn't start out as a Christmas album. It started out maybe as an EP or a couple songs for my daughter, just that were deeply theological and I kind of honed in on some of the broad brush, better themes of Christmas and the story of it and the account of it. And as I kind of began to research and study the scriptures, I realized there was just so much more here. Not that anybody's ever done before and that it's so unique, but I have a unique perspective. And so what I aim to do as kind of pouring into looking and seeing what the scriptures had said, what my genuine aim was to do was to begin to start telling some of these different perspectives as I saw them. Didn't add much at all. I think like in my last video I said, over 80-something%, high 80 percentile of the entire album is directly quoted from scripture, and or is like a paraphrase of something that you find there. So there's very little of like me putting my stamp on things. Although there are some ways that I say things that aren't, verbatim or thought for thought as far as the scripture goes. Just really, I felt like a really creative and artistic way to bring something. So that being said, as I was kind of looking at all of Christmas and as I started to research through the Old Testament, and I did try to focus, okay, we have one promise, in Genesis 3, you shall crush his head, but he shall bruise your heel. And then you've got, a lot of mentions there. You got some in the Psalms, you have some in Isaiah, you have some in Malachi. And so when I first really started to look at these passages in scriptures that have been promised to the people of Israel and to the faithful, right? Faithful of Israel, big difference, different conversation, long time down the road. But I really honed in on that passage in Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 and 7. And that became kind of the focal point of what I really made my anchor in this Christmas album. And so those two verses make up the pre-chorus and chorus of this particular song. Now, when I typically like to write songs, sometimes I start with a concept or an idea or a perspective. Sometimes I really like to start with the chorus. I always feel that if you have a really good chorus, you can kind of build around that, and you're always building into it, and it's kind of culminates, and then you're kind of, working through it to get back to the really good parts. And so in this particular song, the chorus was very, very, very important. I have another song on the album, the Advent Wreath, which does not work in that type of structure. It really was like verse, kind of bridge chorus. And so, so each song kind of has its own skeletal structure. I always feel that way. I've always loved, pop structure for songs. Even when I was playing heavy music back in the day, I really tried to bring a lot of those pop sensibilities, the pop song structure into what I was building, because I wanted it to be catchy. I wanted it to be anthemic in singing it. I wanted people to be involved in it. And that's just how I write songs. That's just kind of how I see it. And not everybody's like that. And I think there's a lot of beautiful ways that you can write music. So this is just how I did it. So with this song, Promised One, I really honed in on the chorus. And the one thing that I really, I feel it's quoted in a lot of different Christmas songs, but I loved how, I loved, if I'm going to build something, especially with this one, thinking about Jesus and thinking about wanting to kind of hone in and for my daughter and to anchor my heart in it. Call him Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Now the call him part obviously is not, directly in there, except for in the end of verse 6, it says his name shall be called. And so verse 7 is, Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And so, so I kind of literally just took that right from scripture, which is awesome. The chorus on this one was extremely difficult to kind of grab the elements that were there, because, and this one actually, as I was writing it, I kind of moved lines around because I felt flowed a lot better with the melodies that were coming out. And so in the particular passage in Isaiah 9:7, the zeal of the Lord is that last verse there. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. And I just loved, I loved leading with that. I loved leading with that it was the zeal of the Lord of hosts, which, wink, wink, nod, nod, we know who that is. So I love that first line in the chorus. By zeal, the Lord of hosts has established a kingdom and a peace that will never end. What an amazing promise. And that's basically taking the same kind of themes. And that word government is there in 9:7, and that's just a real tough word to sing, and not a lot of us like to sing about the goodness of government. However, I wanted to kind of frame that in a way for believers that we can go, So instead of kind of using that kind of concept of government, I wanted to use that concept of a kingdom. The Lord governs over his people, and he also establishes a kingdom. And so that's kind of how I went with that one. The third line of the chorus there, by justice and righteousness, the promised one. And this kind of became the main jewel there, if you will, within the chorus of what the song is titled from. And really, I had just looked at the beginning of verse 6 there. For unto us a child is born, a son is given, and the government shall rest upon his shoulder. And I just thought about that and thinking of this is the one who was promised to us. So by justice and righteousness, obviously that's pulled right there towards the end of verse 7. The promised one sits on David's throne and rules forevermore. And this was a thing that just became really, really interesting to me, because we knew that through the line of David, that the Messiah would come. And so the throne of David becomes a really interesting study as we continue to look through some of the minor prophets, and you look at Isaiah, and you start to see these different, it starts to come up again. It comes up again in Luke. It becomes really important in Luke's narrative when he's giving the genealogy of Joseph. Like, why would you do that? And we'll get into that in that song much later. But this throne of David becomes really, really important. It's important for the faithful of Israel because they knew that through David's line, one day the Messiah would come and sit on David's throne. And so I love that. So not only does he sit on David's throne, but he rules forevermore. Frankly, I just love that. So I'm going to, now that I've kind of peeled into the pre-chorus and the chorus, kind of where that came from, I kind of want to zoom out of just kind of how I crafted in the verses. And so a couple of the passages that I had kind of pulled in my study and my research, obviously Romans 8:23, Psalm 130, 5 and 6. A world worn out and waiting, longing with hope. So I kind of wanted to set that baseline of almost not so much like Star Wars anthemic, but a world lost in order and decay. So I wanted to that really is the setting that we come into the narrative, because a lot of this song is narrative. It kind of jumps into some obviously messianic prophecies, but it kind of, we zoom out too with the kind of the narrative through this story. So a world worn out and waiting, longing with hope, as dawn brings a bright morning. On the throne of David, a child is born to us. A son was given from heaven, a king has come. And so, from Malachi to Isaiah to the Gospel of Luke, back down into Isaiah 9:6, a son was given from heaven, the king has come. There's a lot of scripture that I'm kind of pulling and threading and really just building a tapestry and kind of tying and binding together thematically, kind of juicing, if you will, this verse to lead us into the pre-chorus and chorus. And so then we come out of that chorus, right? Sits on David's throne and rules forevermore. So here we have this big picture in verse 1 of here's this world, super worn out. Everybody is hoping that God will do something. I mean, we know that there were 400 years of silence. God did not speak through prophets. It was quiet in all of Israel. And it seemed like God had abandoned them. And in large in part, it'd be very understandable to believe that, to feel that. How long, Lord? Oh, how long? So from there, going from in this now that like these are the promises that God had said in this like long gap before the promised one comes, we zoom in verse 2 on Bethlehem. In Bethlehem's small stable, heaven roars. I literally love that idea and that concept. That's it's obviously from that passage there in Micah 5:2, Bethlehem, that the Messiah would come. But I had this idea of just thinking, and it kind of ties into that next line there. So the first line from Bethlehem's small stable, heaven roars, shepherds make their way, angelic chorus soars. And so in just thinking that like heaven having a front row seat, and not everybody is just super bummed out, but like pumped, really pumped. Heaven is roaring. The angels are singing a chorus over this scene. Glory in the highest, right? This is amazing. There wasn't a level of regret. There wasn't a level of sorrow or weeping or darn it, I guess this is what we have to do now. But there was an anticipatory joy. It pleased the Lord to do this. And so there's that joy that we get to encounter when we think of this scene at Christmas, that it was holy and it was precious, but the singing that is over that little stable in Bethlehem, I thought was really beautiful. A star of light in the skies, the promise it adorns, obviously referring to the star in the east. The passage there, kind of Numbers 24:17, you can kind of look in that one too. Matthew 2, verses 2 and 9, kind of refers to this. And again, zooming in further, and then we zoom into that last line there, the verse, like, to a humble family, a child of peace is born. And I really loved kind of the little bit more broken down kind of, drum rim break into that second pre-chorus and the huge build up there. And so obviously bringing it back into the chorus, getting back into our bridge, right? Messiah born, the promised one, angels in awe to see. He came in love to set us free. O Son of God, in you we believe. And so in thinking about the shepherds and thinking about the angels, thinking about Mary and Joseph, thinking about the wise men, thinking about the people in Bethlehem who had heard from the shepherds as they went out, spreading this gospel that Messiah had come. This to me kind of fully encapsulated this concept of the promised one who sits on the throne of David. And so, with that, again, there's a ton of scriptures that we could break down or that we could look into. These were the ones that really helped influence and shape how I pulled this song together. I hope that you really enjoy this one. It was the first one that I wrote. And it was one that it took a lot of crafting. Not everything was like, oh, first time through, rough, first draft. This is great. There was a lot as I was kind of going through, the amount of syllables and my syllable count, and then the wording, and does it roll off the tongue, and can we sing it, can we scream it, can we hum it, can we memorize it, is it ingrained, does it flow? And this is kind of how this one shaped up. So I hope you love this video. I hope it is ministered to you. I hope as you kind of look into this song a little bit more, thinking about the promised one, Jesus, the Messiah who sits on the throne of David, the righteous one. I hope that you're really encouraged. I hope that as you look at these things, you see that this wasn't just some happenstance, that this was something that was absolutely carefully and masterfully crafted before the foundation of the earth, that it is impossible for anybody to have fulfilled these prophecies that were made. And it still is impossible. It could not happen today. And so what a great thing that it has. And what a great way I feel for us to begin kind of these videos and starting out dealing and focusing and looking at Jesus. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I can't wait to share the next 11 with you guys. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching this one. Bye-bye.